Hi, everyone. Welcome to Autism Virtually's interview team. I'm Jen, it's Jillian, Cori, and we have Nadja with us from Denmark, who is awesome. And I'm so excited that she took the time to talk to us. We've been having a good time. So, I live in the United States, spoiler alert. So, I find it really interesting to think about and to learn from people from other countries, like how, if my son had been born there, like what would life have been? What's life for people who are autistic in other countries? I just love that idea and to think about that. So my question for you, Nadja, my first question for you is, I know that you were diagnosed later in life, and I'm just wondering what motivated you to seek out that diagnosis?
Yeah, I was 37 when I was diagnosed. I'm 40 now. Um, right at the beginning of COVID, actually. So everything shut down, and I had to, take in this whole diagnosis. What does that mean? And at the same time, I was really stressed and afraid of COVID. It was not the greatest start. um, but I have always struggled to find my place within a work field. I have a degree in teaching. In Denmark, you have to have a minimum of a BA to teach in regular schools. So I have that, but I've never been able to work in a school. It's too stressful, and I suffer from stress and anxiety and depression. And so I've really jumped from job to job to job and never really been anywhere longer than a year. Uh, and then I've become stressed or had a depression or something else that either left me uh, on sick leave for a long time or I got fired. Um, so in 2018, I think it was, I was on sick leave, and in Denmark, you are not limited to a certain number of days. If you're sick, you're sick. So I was in sick leave, and if you are sick for a long time, you are appointed a caseworker. And this lovely caseworker asked me, "Well, I can see here in your records that this is not the first time you've had a depression. Is there anything you could think of that might help so you might feel better in a workspace or anything, another education, anything?" Uh, and I had previously been seeing a psychiatrist who mentioned something about the autism spectrum, but she wasn't allowed to diagnose me at that point. So I said to the caseworker, "Well, I had previously talked to a psychiatrist about getting a proper diagnosis." Um, and she said, "Well, we can do that. I can refer you to a proper diagnosis, and this is within the. We have both private practice and we have like a regional practice, and the regional is more. How do I say this? Um, the diagnosis from a private practice wouldn't necessarily be accepted everywhere. So she would refer me to the regional, and she did. And within like it took 4 hours, I think, and I walked out of there with a diagnosis in hand. I was diagnosed with Asperger's. I know it's in the US at least, the term Asperger's is not used anymore, but it's still used here, and that's my official diagnosis. Um, yeah, so really that was the start of it. To get to the root of all these depressions and anxiety attacks, which later has it's been clear to me that it's not really anxiety attacks, it's meltdowns I'm having. But I didn't know. People had just been telling me, "Well, that's an anxiety attack." So I believed them for a lot of years. But
Wow, that
yeah, that was the start of it.
I love that answer. And here in the US, getting a job and keeping a job, no matter, we do levels. I think that's like the most recent thing, level 1, 2, 3. One being mild, which is Asperger's, uh, kids who have Asperger's, like my son, he is going to college right now. He's about to graduate. But the actual employment rate in our country for kids like him is 15%. And that's including part-time. That's including any job, any job, not just jobs in his field. If he wants to get a job in his field, then what that looks like is out of, the 100% of kids, which is from a very small number from what started, who actually do graduate, about 8% of them get a job in their field, like, and even the entry levels. And then I worry, is he going to be able to, keep that? It is definitely not something that I think you just deal with in Denmark. Is likely, a world thing. Well, thank you for sharing that and talking about that. Now, also in the US, my second question is this, and then I'll pass it on. Here in the US, girls are often undiagnosed, very missed, because girls, we've learned, present autism in a completely different way. When you go to a psychiatrist here, they have a list of what we're looking for, check the
Yeah.
boxes, and girls don't check the boxes. They're wonderful at masking, and they are completely different than the boys. So you'll see a number saying, 1 in 4 people with autism are girls. But science is showing that that number is actually even, but that we're missing them. And I wonder, is this something that Denmark also struggles with? Do you have more of an equal ratio of diagnosis? Because you're a girl, it made it harder here to have received that diagnosis as a child.
I think it's getting better. I grew up in the 80s, and there were no autistic girls back then. It was purely a boys thing. We weren't even looking for autism in girls. So we've come a long way, but there's still ways to go. I'm sure of it. When I was at the diagnosis referral thing, my mom came with me because I struggle with strangers. So my mom is my security blanket, even though I'm 40. um, but it was really nice because the psychiatrist was able to ask her questions from my childhood and early years that I didn't remember. And he said, well, this is new because we wouldn't even be looking at this when Nadja was a child. We wouldn't be questioning whether this could be autism. We would just be thinking, well, she's an odd child. But we wouldn't even think that there could be a real diagnosis here. So that's why nobody caught it back then. I know they are asking other questions to girls nowadays than they are asking boys, because girls mask a lot. So I know this checklist, they are divvying up for boys and for girls. So, but I think there's still more boys getting diagnosed than girls.
So I have a question. Your English is really great, and so I wondered, is that something that everybody studies in Denmark? Here you get, at least where I live, we got to pick a language, but I wouldn't say that I'm fluent in it, and not everybody is fluent in more than one language. So how is that in Denmark?
First of all, thank you. Yeah, when I was in school, we started having English as a second language in 5th grade. Nowadays, they start in 2nd grade, I think.
Wow.
And then so we have English from nowadays from 2nd grade, and then German from 5th grade, and then another language if they choose to do like I think it's the equivalent of high school on top of the primary school. Then they'll have another language there. But I wouldn't say I'm fluid in neither German or Italian or Latin. I've had a lot of languages. Um, I think it's because we're such a small country that no matter where we go, in a workplace or anywhere else, it's a necessity. We need to be able to talk with people outside of our borders. Also, Danish television we don't dub anything, so children hear a lot of English from from the start. You have Dora the Explorer, and she teaches I think Spanish, right? Um, Here she's speaking Danish and English. So actually, that's really the start from baby
Interesting.
age. Yeah.
In my school, at least, we only had Spanish, and it was middle school to my first year of high school. That's all the Spanish I got. And it wasn't even the whole year. It was, in total, it was about one class for the entire year. If we were, because they do them like in semesters. So I did it 2 semesters, and I was that's it. That's all you need to know. I don't remember a single word other than the stuff I knew beforehand.
Yo no comprehende. I don't understand. I took 3 years. I can also say the dog is blue. El perro is as azul, which is not helpful at all. But I think
No.
Americans, we're too egocentric. We don't put enough, you know, knowledge behind. And like you said, we live in a world where many languages are spoken. I think we
It's
need to
also
be more
not an
global minded when it comes to languages.
You're
For sure.
absolutely right, but it also, the big thing here is it's not at all necessary. Most people here speak English. That's the main language in the US. So you might encounter a small portion of your life to people who speak a different language. But hearing it is not going to be your everyday in work for the most part, at least. I think I can count on one hand how many people I've met that spoke a different language than English.
Yeah, it depends on where you live for sure. I have a question real quick. So you got your diagnosis, right? So when you got your diagnosis, what kind of supports did that open up for you? Like, for example, in the United States, once you're a child or you get a diagnosis, you can get, as Cori had mentioned, Medicaid, which means you have great national health care that's open for any kind of support you might possibly need for the rest of your life. Also, if you're a parent of a child who's been diagnosed, you can get services like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, different behavioral services if you find that you need them. In Denmark, what does that look like post-diagnosis for your country?
First of all, I have to say we have free healthcare. Everyone has free healthcare, and that's no matter what you need. If you think you need, I don't know, the doctor, you need a skin care something, or ear, nose, or throat, or anything specialist, it's free. But of course, there are things that a regular person, you can't come in from the street and say, I want to only work 10 hours a week, because why? We would go bankrupt if nobody would choose to work more. So we have one of the main things that I benefit tremendously from, we have a flex job system. People who can't work 37 hours a week, that's our full work week, that's 37 hours. People who can't work that much and can prove it can be eligible for this flex job system. It means that basically you work the hours you're able to, and then the government reimburse you for the rest of it. So I have, unfortunately, they are very, very hard to find, these jobs, but that's kind of another thing. I am so lucky I have a flex job at the zoo. So that's one of the reasons I have the skins. um, so I work up to 10 hours a week. And the hours I don't work, like if I work 10 hours 1 week, then the government will reimburse me for the rest of it, the 27 hours I don't work. So that pays me a living wage, which is brilliant, which means I can still stay in our house and we don't go bankrupt. A lot of autistic people have these fixed jobs. Also, people with permanent disabilities, like if you're in an accident and lose a leg or have something with your back or something. It's a long process getting these jobs. You have to, they require some kind of internship, which is unpaid, to determine how many hours you are able to work. And then you are given a piece of paper that says, well, you personally can work 10 hours a week. So now go find a job, a flex job. And the place you then work are reimbursed some of your pay from the government. But it's really a brilliant system, and it has helped me enormously, because I used to struggle having, I couldn't be both a mom, a wife, and work full time. It was impossible. Now I can piece everything together, and there's still time to be me and to be a good mom. And so
I'm like massively in love with this idea and how you do things. One of the
Same.
issues here, like, it's not just, when our kids grow up, but if you happen to be a parent of a child with autism, sadly, there's a lot of single parents because the stress that can put on a couple, right? And then you have all of these therapies once you do get the diagnosis and once you do get insurance for them, which takes way too long to get all this put together. Then you have to take them to these therapies to help them because that is what they need and you're their parent. But then you can't hold a job. Like, how are you supposed to work and be able to do everything? I think something like a flex system would work really well for parents, of kids with any disability. Does a flex system also consider that? Like, would you be able to say, well, I can only work 10 hours because I'm taking my child to all of these therapies, or my child needs more attention?
Yeah,
Like,
no, actually the flex system is only for people with a diagnosis. But if you have a child with autism or some kind of other disability, or really, really sick or something, you actually can get paid. It can be your job to take care of your child, at least for a period of time. I think it's 2.5 years, and then they have to reevaluate. Does this child still need this help? You can also use the system if you have critically ill parents. Then you actually can make it your job to take care of them, and then you'll be paid by the government, because it's both cheaper for the government to have it's not a high salary, of course, but it's cheaper for the government to have like the kids of a sick person take care of them than it is to put this sick person in some kind of home and care facility. And the same with the children. It's better for the children to stay at home with their parents. So it's a win-win for everyone. But of course, it has to be, you can't just walk in the door and say, well, I want to do this. It has to be evaluated that it's actually a need for the child. But like, I don't know the English word, if your child really refuses to go to school, can't go to school because they are not thriving in school, you can also make it your job to stay at home with the child and make sure they get the education they need.
Well, that's awesome.
Homeschooling.
Yeah, homeschooling.
That's
I'm
it's
gonna
called.
one thing, and then yeah, we do that here too. I'm gonna give it to Jillian. But the only last comment I want to make on this subject is, in the US, we do that for our elderly. Like, for example, I'm working and I help my grandmother so that she can stay home. And it does, as you said, save the government a lot of money. We actually have a government program for the elderly, but we don't have a program like that for, minors, for our kids. And I think that is something we could definitely benefit from. All right, Jillian.
Okay, so I got three questions for you. My first one is, what was your biggest struggle growing up?
The social interactions, no doubt. It wasn't really a problem in the smaller grades. I have to say, I started school a year early because all the children I played with in kindergarten, that's what comes before school. I'm not really sure about your system, but we have like kindergarten, that's from age 3 to 6, and then you start school. But all the children I played with started school a year earlier than I was supposed to start. And so I was alone, and I didn't really feel like making new friends. So when I had been on strike for 2 weeks, I think, just sitting in my wardrobe in kindergarten and striking and didn't want to play, didn't want to eat, didn't want to do anything, my mom took me to the school, to the office, and said, well, is there some way she can start school along with her friends? And I was allowed to start. So I was a whole year younger than all of my classmates. But it has never been a problem for me to follow along with the assignments and stuff like that. But from, I think, age, I don't know, 13, 12, 13, I think, it became really hard because all the other girls moved right along. They got interested in boys and dances and, I don't know, everything that I wasn't interested in. I still wanted to play with my Barbie dolls. So that was hard. That was really, really hard. I lost all the friendships I had worked so hard for. Yeah, and going from, like, our school system is 10 years of primary school, and then you can choose which direction you want to take. You can choose what's that called? Like if you want to be a carpenter or a plumber or some kind of handiwork, that's one direction. You can choose what's the equivalent of high school. I did that. And then you can choose a trade school. And so all the kids I went to class with chose different directions. I was the only one who wanted to go to, it's called gymnasium, but college. And I didn't really get any friends in college. That's 3 years. Yeah. So that was 3 hard years. Then after that, I started nursing school, and I did 2 semesters of nursing school, and I found out I was not geared for working with strangers. So that was a stupid thing to do. But luckily, we don't have a limit on the number of educations we can do. We're actually paid to study, so I just skipped out of that and and did something else. I had one friend left from primary school that I was still seeing on weekends and things like that. But friendships have been really, really hard. I have now I have one friend left, and he lives in Greenland, so he's he's far away. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. Sorry, Jill, to jump in, but um does that mean that your university level education is paid for by the government too?
Yeah, we have free education, uh, and it's limitless almost. You can't study all your life, but so there is a limit, but it comes kind of natural because once you've done some kind of degree, you want to get out and work. um, but yeah, everything is free. We have, like as I said, we have these options, and then if you do college, you can go to university after college and do uh, some kind of degree. We don't do degrees in gymnasium slash high school. Um, that's only that's kind of like 3 years more of primary school. It's just the basic subjects like Danish, English, whatever language you choose, Latin, a bit of math, a bit of, yeah, some kind of, uh, basic knowledge. And then you go from there into uh, a, a real education, which whatever you choose. Like we have, if you would do a BA in the US, you would go to university, right? Yeah, we have different. You can do it at the university, but we have like for teaching, we have called seminarium, which is only for teachers. We have a seminarium for people working with children, like in kindergarten, and people working with special needs children. That's like a degree in its own on its own. So I went to seminarium, which is 4 years, and then you end up with a BA in teaching. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, back to you, Jill.
That's just really cool. Here in the US, we get thousands of dollars in debt, or so much debt when it comes to trying to get a higher education. So that's nice to hear at least. So what is something that you think Denmark could improve on?
Sorry. Something we can improve on. Yeah, that's actually a hard question. Because when I compare to the US, we are so fortunate, like you say. And uh, yeah, our one thing actually. As I said, we have free healthcare, but dentists aren't included in the free healthcare. I would like if they were, because that actually make it so that a lot of people have bad teeth, even though they are, physically fit, and they have all these other opportunities for, uh, going to the doctor and other things, but our teeth aren't included for some reason. I would like it if they were. Also, physiotherapy. That's not always included. It can be if it's part of like if you had an operation or something and you need to retrain a part of your body, you can get some free physiotherapy. But if you just think, well, my back hurts sometimes, I would like to go to a chiropractor or a physiotherapist. It's not included. You have to pay for it. But I'm aware there has to be some sort of limits because we're not made of money either. So the government has to choose where to spend and where to save. I'm aware of that. What would I like? Yeah, it would be nice if these flex jobs were more readily available. It's so hard to get one. I was unemployed I was awarded the flex job grant. It's kind of a grant. You are given this piece of paper and then you have to find the job yourself. I was given this and till I found a job, it took 2.5 years. 2.5 years where I was ready to work, I was able to work, but I couldn't find a job. It would be nice if like bigger institutions were, if they had to provide a certain number of flex jobs. I'm aware that it's not everywhere you want someone with a mental disability to work, but like I can do a lot of things just as well as any neurotypical person. So having more of these flex jobs would be nice because there's a lot of people who are unemployed but didn't have to be.
That sounds like it would help out a lot. I do have one more question for you. Which is, I actually wrote this one down to be a little more uplifting because I figured the first two were kind of a downer. My last question is, what is your favorite thing about Denmark?
You know, I've always talked about this. We have free healthcare, we have free education. We are even paid to study from the age of 18, and as long as you study, you are given money because the state wants you to focus on studying and not on working. And that's great. We have a lot of brilliant opportunities. If I have to say something I really appreciate, I think it's how much we take care of each other. We are not necessarily, we are not a talkative people at all. You won't see people chatting at the bus stop. They would look weird at you if you did that. But that being said, you could leave your purse somewhere and it would still be there when you returned. I don't know if you've heard this, but in Scandinavia, we have our babies sleeping outside for naps, and they do that both at home, of course, but they also do it in the middle of cities. When my daughter was a baby, I took her for coffee with a friend, or took her to the library, or go shopping or something. If she fell asleep in her pram, I would just leave it outside, and she would still be there when I returned. I had a baby monitor, of course, but if she woke up, and that happened a few times, before I came outside, some stranger would be rocking the pram with the crying baby.
Wow.
And we are really, and I think it's an aspect of the free healthcare and the opportunities we are given in life, because we have a very low crime rate, and we generally just trust each other. I think we have no guns, we have no weapons. There's even a law about how big a knife you can have in your car. People have gotten in trouble for driving around with a box cutter in that car. There are really laws to protect us. Sometimes they get too square, and people get in trouble for stupid things. But it's to protect us as a people. And I think that's what I appreciate the most.
I
Also,
wish
we don't have natural disasters or dangerous animals or anything like that either. So it's safe, pretty safe.
I need to move to Denmark. That's what's going through my head. Because if you left your baby outside, you would have one of two things happen. You would no longer have a baby, or you'd have someone horrified, and you would be you would probably have CPS called on you or some other thing, because they'd be like, "You're leaving a baby out here alone." Those would be the two reactions you would get. With a lot of the different things here, like where you guys don't have guns, like, yeah, no, I wish. I
Yeah.
wish. Worst part is I didn't realize how desensitized I was to it until there was this thing at the game that my sister went to. A school game, and there were reports of a gun. 3 kids ended up being taken to the hospital. It was not a gun, it was a knife. But while my mom is sitting there freaking out, I'm like, it's not a big deal. Just get there and pick her up.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big deal. Just pick her up. It's like that was my mentality to the idea of, oh, my sister could die because she could be shot.
Yeah.
It just went right over my head how absolutely dangerous that thing was. And then my sister's gotten in the car like, not a care in the world. She's like, oh yeah, my friend got jumped like twice while we were there.
Yeah. That's really one of the main differences. We traveled, my husband and our daughter, we traveled the US for 2 months in 2017, and we of course talked to a lot of people because I like these interactions where we can tell each other about, wow, that's really different between your culture and mine. And my husband wanted to see like a gun shop, somebody selling weapons, because we don't have that here. And he was like, you need a gun. You need a gun to protect yourself. While we drove in an RV from San Francisco to Miami. And he was like, you need a gun. You need to be able to protect your family. And my husband was like, I would know how to shoot a gun. I have never even held a gun. I have never seen a gun up close. We have had, sadly, one shooting in Denmark, and that was just last year. Some guy, but that was a rifle, like a hunting rifle. And they are more readily available because people go hunting. And sadly, he was mentally ill and he killed 2 people. But that's the only shooting we've ever had in Danish history. And people don't really have knives either. We've had people breaking into our house at night while we were sleeping. And of course, that was annoying as heck. They destroyed the locks on our doors, but I was never afraid, actually. They didn't get into the house because we have a big dog and he chased them away. But I wasn't afraid. It wasn't like I feared for my life, because I know for a fact they didn't have guns. They didn't have weapons. They could have threatened us, yeah, but we can defend ourselves from, if they want to, I don't know, beat us. I'm not afraid going anywhere either. I've been walking home alone from going clubbing when I was younger, in the middle of the night, and was never afraid. So
Another big
yeah.
difference. I will not go out any later than 7 o'clock in the summer, which is when the sun sets. And 5 o'clock in the winter, which is when the sun sets. Once it starts getting dark, I am done. No, not gonna happen. It's just a wow. It's strange to think about because these are such normal everyday occurrences. This would be like it is the equivalent to being like, oh, I can't go out at night because, you know, something bad could happen. It is the equivalent to you don't screw with the beehive because you might get stung. That is a
Exactly.
level, unless I am directly faced with it, I ain't gonna really be scared all that much. We do
But it's interesting.
my house in particular does have like quite a few issues because my dad has a garage with good amount of money in it, like for tools and stuff, because that was his big hobby. So over his entire 50 years of life, he's been collecting tools. So we do have an issue with that. And I'd be sitting there picking up the damn pickaxe, like ready to go march into the garage. I yeah,
Yeah, like I grew up in Aalborg, which is the third largest city in Denmark. Now I live just outside of Aalborg in a small rural village. I think we're about 300 people living here. So of course here where I live now, we don't even lock our doors. We don't lock the car. Nothing ever happens. My daughter has been walking to and from school from she was, I don't know, 6, I think. When she was 5, I started sending her out on weekends, like, go out, see if you can find someone to play with. Just make sure the parents send us a text message to say where you are.
okay,
And
so I do know that it's much safer in your country. Obviously, that's the whole conversation right now, apparently. But you are saying these things, and my whole heart is like dropping and pounding.
Yeah.
It is like the idea of sending a little kid out. Oh, go find a friend. Hell, I'll
Yeah.
take and walk my nephew down around the corner, and he's 8, which is not that's more me thing because I was walking around the block at 8, like that, like that wasn't a big deal for the most part, as long as I gave, oh, I'll be here. Um, oh my goodness, that's really weird. You
Yeah.
want to know what my dad's catchphrase is? And it's probably, now that I think about it, one of the most American catchphrases you'll ever hear. Don't do that, that's how you get shot.
Yeah.
Like I said, one of the most American catchphrases you could possibly ever hear.
Yeah.
Some, like, that is so weird.
You've totally blown Jill's mind.
Actually,
So I do have one more question. You talked about like not really having knives. What about cooking knives? Like you have to have those.
yeah.
Sounds very weird to say you don't have knives because I'm like, you mean like pocket knives?
Yeah. Of course we have knives at our house, and like we go fishing, so of course we have a fishing knife as well that we bring, but we don't have knives as weapons. People don't go around with weapons. Like it's not. I don't know how typical it is to use a
They sell
knife as a
machetes at
weapon in
Walmart,
the
I'm pretty sure. Or at least they
yeah.
used to.
Yeah.
And going and walking around with a hunting knife, and we saw people doing that when we were in the US. We wouldn't do this here. It's not like, of course, if you're going fishing, you would have a fishing knife in your car, or a hunting knife if you were going hunting. But if you're going hunting and you have a rifle and a hunting knife, you need permits for it. Because if the police stops you and you don't have permits for these things, you will absolutely get a ticket for it. You would even get a ticket for a box cutter if it's in your car. You can't drive around or go around with knives like that. you can buy a
Uh,
knife at the supermarket, but it would be wrapped in a box until you go home, until you get home.
so here we do have rules on knives. Like it has to be a certain length. And the only
Yeah.
reason I know that is because my brother avidly collected them. His whole wall was all sorts of different knives. There were some really cool ones because they were meant to be decorative. So they were rainbow. Some were like had the rainbow shine on them and stuff. They were really cool. Um, so I know a little bit about like there are some rules. They are not enforced at all. I don't even know how my brother got some of the knives he got because they were definitely against the rules on what you could and could not have.
Hmm.
So there are some rules. They're just like basically ignored, which is not
Yeah.
any better now that I say that out loud.
But
Um,
if I understand correctly from, and most of my knowledge is from, memes, uh, you have a lot of Americans have a weird relationship with the police. The police are kind of hated, right?
yes.
And yeah, people don't really like the police. We
Yeah.
adore the police. We unless you have something to hide, we love the police.
Oh
They
no,
come
you
to our
will.
schools, and yeah.
Oh, so I have a question because I know that some countries don't have this. Do you have undercover cops?
I don't think so. I've never heard of it.
So
I
probably not.
wouldn't. Yeah, probably not. I think we have like at supermarkets to stop shoplifters, but that's someone that the supermarket hires and not a police officer.
So yeah,
Uh,
no,
Security
there
guard.
there
paying,
there are
paying the
literal
police to
cops
do
that'll
that.
sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you, but no, there are
Oh no.
literal cops that'll drive around in like the completely black cars, and if you read their license plate, they'll say police. Uh to catch people in crimes without them knowing that they're catching them in crimes. So like they'll just drive around and you would have no idea that there's a police officer right next to you. Uh
We
that's
don't have
that's
that. That's but we don't have like we don't really have a lot of crime. I think I've been before this meeting because I thought, well, this might come up, so I was looking at some statistics, and the most popular, that's a weird word, but the most prevalent crime in Denmark is shoplifting.
Mm.
And that's like 75%, I think. Uh, Very little violent crime. Some economical crime, people forging the books or something like that. But very little personal crime, like people hurting each other or things like that. Uh,
Mm.
so I don't think there would be much to catch really in Copenhagen. Sorry, our capital, Copenhagen. There's a small city within the city called Christiania, and on Christiania is privately owned. It's really a bunch of squatters taking over an unused part of the city back in the 70s. And so nowadays it's privately owned, and people come to Christiania because there's a lot of sale on drugs in Christiania, mostly cannabis, but a few harder drugs. And the police sometimes do raids there. But that's about the only thing I can think of. Uh, and it's in the news every time they do it because it's a small country, so we hear everything that goes on. Every time the police have guns, of course, but every time they lose a shot, it has to be documented, and it's in the news. And well, somebody shot a warning shot in, I don't know, Frederikshavn or Aarhus or something. So it's national news because it happens so seldom.
I think if you took and watched like the American news, you'd be horrified. I think if you watch some of the American news, you'd be horrified when they cover some of those stories here.
Yeah.
Because they are not, oh, this one person got shot once, or this one person they fired their gun once. No, it is like, oh yeah, this person has 3 bullet holes and they had a little thing of cannabis in their car. That is the type of that by the way, that is why we don't like the police here a lot. A lot of the US don't like the police. Because
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, no, this person died because they had a little bag, like this bag of cannabis.
Yeah.
Sometimes
And
there's right
that's
now, I'm sorry, there's a story in the news right now about a man who did nothing wrong, other than being African American, who was beat to death by 5 police officers, and it was all recorded. So you think like, okay, we start recording things are going to get better, and they don't. And that's just one of many stories that you might see on our news. I also think on the other side, though, it's hard to be a police officer in this country because there are more guns in this country than there are people. There are a ridiculous amount of people in this country. We really need to change the dynamic on both sides. You know, there's no excuse for what happened to that man at all. Like if we're talking gun culture or anything, I mean, we don't have that community here. You know, racism is a real thing here. Sadly, we don't have, you know, where we really support each other. If somebody's having a hard time, or more likely to say, get a job, you know, like pull yourself up by your bootstraps is another American saying. It's just so different here than Denmark, which I definitely want to move to. And I love my country, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it seems so simple by there. I see why my son, he's really into the Nordic countries, like where you live, and he wants to like live in a place like that,
Yeah.
with less cars, which is good. You guys like don't have as many cars. You have bike
Nope.
ways and stuff, which is good because I like one of my biggest fears is that my son's gonna be like, you know, a sensory overload and walk into a car. He's almost done it several times in his life, even as an adult. So I'm really getting behind though. I'll be like, you know what? I think Denmark sounds like a great place. You need
Yeah.
to go there.
You would be so welcome. Even
Actually,
if
the
you come
work
here on
week is
holiday,
3
I would
hours
love to.
less. Our
Yeah,
average
the
work week is 40
hard.
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flex job might be good for him, but yeah, that's awesome. Cori, do you have any more questions before I shoot my last few in rapid succession?
Yeah, I do have one. I was, well, it was relatable. It was going back to when you were talking about being on strike from kindergarten. And I was thinking about how my mom would always tell me that I was really headstrong as a kid. So my question is like, how did your diagnosis surprise your mom? Did it sort of make things make sense? How did people around you react?
It's funny actually because like my mom has always been like, as I said, my security blanket. I've taken her to doctor's appointments, and so of course she knows that I've struggled a lot, especially as an adult. But I think she was surprised with the diagnosis. I wasn't at all. Actually, I was very, very relieved. I felt like shouting from the rooftops, um, because finally I felt like I belonged somewhere. It was weird actually because um, I have always had this sense of being alien, uh, deeply. Just it wasn't just a sense; it was a knowing that I was different. But growing up, I've thought that everybody felt like that. Um, but I was like, well, yeah, I'm different. No doubt about it. I'm different, and I'm thinking differently than all these other people. Um, so getting the diagnosis allowed me to find some Facebook groups both Danish groups and international, and talking to people, and just this sense of saying, well, I've always felt like an alien, and people say, well, welcome to the club. That was amazing. And I said that to the psychiatrist who did the evaluation, and he was like, well, that's classic. So yeah, I was hugely relieved. My husband has not really, it's not that he ignores it, but he's like, well, you were like this when we met, so nothing has really changed. He's happy that I've gotten this flex job because he sees how much of this difference it makes for our personal lives, both financially, but also it allows me to, yeah, both work and be a mom and a wife and keep, yeah, keep a house, and things that it didn't really fit before. I was really only thriving when I was at home, either on sick leave or fired or something, unemployed. As soon as I got a full-time job, he knew it was just a matter of time, and I would crash again, crash and burn. And well, it's not nice to see your loved one suffer like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's happy with the diagnosis, but he's not really bothered by it. Sometimes when I say, well, that's an autism thing, he's like, maybe it's just a Nadja thing. My my mom and stepdad are very, I think they've really read a lot about it since I got the diagnosis. They are more supportive now. Uh, my in-laws my in-laws are quite a bit older than my own parents. I don't think I think they want to understand, but I don't think they really do. It's more of a keep quiet and not talk about it kind of thing. They're happy I have a job now. That's all that matters to them. They think, well, you could work a bit more, couldn't you? But they don't say it. It's just like an unsaid thing, and I don't talk a lot about it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know like when COVID hit and I couldn't work, like I didn't realize how much of my self-esteem and how well I felt about myself was wrapped up in my job. I felt useless then, and I fell into a deep depression. It is incredibly important to have a purpose, to feel like you're giving to the world and you're helping your family. Not having that can definitely be mentally brutal, no matter where you live. I think that's like a global humanity thing, feeling we have. Thank you for sharing that. All right, you ready for the last garage?
Yeah, sorry.
These are more abstract questions. So one of my first question is, if you could go back, which we can't, so just, thinking maybe if you could go back and be diagnosed at 6, would you choose to have that happen or not?
No, not at 6. Because yeah, and we had a question before if I could change anything about the Danish system. One thing is that the special needs education system is not really working. A lot of kids who need a special ed class are put in regular class, and a lot of kids who would actually do better in a regular class are put in special ed classes. And it all depends on where you live, and how much money the regional school system has. So if I had been diagnosed at 6, I would probably have been placed in some kind of special ed class, along with students who were doing much worse than I was. And I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today. I wouldn't have been able to do my education if I had been in special ed. A lot of, no, not a lot. All of the special ed kids never go beyond basic primary school.
Well, that's
Oh, sorry,
an
I have a dog
answer.
sleeping.
Okay. No, that's an interesting answer. I didn't expect that answer. I expected you to say something like, well, then I wouldn't be who I was, and I wouldn't have, I like who I am now. And, like it's that kind of thinking, about
Yeah,
self-growth, like not knowing. If you did know, well, you'd be somebody completely different. It's very interesting to hear your answer because here, early intervention is key.
yeah,
Like my son was diagnosed at 6. It would have been better because I would have known at 2, 3, to get some help on board there. But that's interesting. Interesting answer. Thank you for that. Okay.
and I just want to add that it's of course personal, because that's only me personally. I think, as you say, early intervention is key for most people. I just think it's because I'm level 1 or Asperger's. I did really well in the school system. I did very well with subjects and assignments and got great grades. No problem there. And I think if I would probably have liked to have the diagnosis around 2022, when I finished my education and really started having trouble in the work field, getting a job and finding my place and finding my footing and really making, colleagues. And I would have liked to know that there was a reason. It wasn't just because I'm weird. I am, but it's not.
Yeah.
There's a reason behind it. But on the other hand, I'm not sure I would have pressured myself as much as I have if I had had the diagnosis earlier. I'm not even sure I would have tried to, meet a partner and create a family if I had known. But that's personally because I'm the type of person who would maybe use it as a crutch. I would maybe have just given up. Instead, I've really fought a lot, and yeah, landed a great husband and have a beautiful daughter. And I'm not sure I would have if I had been diagnosed when I was younger. But it's impossible to say.
It is. Yeah. Like it's like kind of, okay, here's another weird one. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, like we were talking about, the struggle that your younger self had with creating and maintaining friendships, feeling alien, which is common as well. My son, I remember we started getting therapy in 3rd grade, and that was one of the things he told his therapist. He felt like he wasn't even human. He was just pretending, like he was an
Yeah.
alien on the planet, and everybody's speaking a language that he doesn't understand.
Mm.
But he also is brilliant, got great grades. But if you could go back and speak to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, that's hard because um it depends on whether or not I would tell myself that I'm autistic, because I think there's so much yeah, autistic people benefit a lot from knowing other autistic people. You need to know that you might not be one of the majority, but you're not the only one feeling like this. There are other aliens walking around. So I would have benefited hugely from knowing that I was not the only one feeling like this. Uh, so if I could uh, some way tell myself that there are other aliens in the world and they are doing great things, like look at, I don't know, Bill Gates and Elon Musk, and yeah, so you are capable of great things and you are not the only one feeling like this.
That is great advice. Okay, here's my last thing. So this is actually, let me see if I can find it. So like when I think about Denmark, right, I also think about, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland. You guys are kind of like cultures. I don't know if it's true because I'm just an American who's egocentric, but can you see this, what I'm sharing with you? Would uh you ever do this in your country? Because this is in
No,
Switzerland.
I've,
It's
I've
real,
never I've
you
never
know,
heard of it.
really
But
true. Like they do that. Um, so
yeah,
they're not
but
very
I have
much
to say
like you.
Switzerland is no. Switzerland is you said Denmark, Norway, Sweden. We have Scandinavia. We are very much alike. Of course, there's this internal banter between Denmark and Sweden. If you ever saw some kind of sporting event, Denmark playing Sweden, we have this hatred, and it's not hatred. It's just fun and games. But Switzerland, I know that to Americans, distances are something quite different. But to me, Switzerland is far away. It's like I had to drive through Germany to get to Switzerland. Uh, and I wouldn't say that we are similar to Switzerland. Not
So they're not
even
part of the
like
club. Okay, so I've learned
no,
something
no, no,
because
no,
I
no,
saw this
they're
and I'm
not.
like, that's very unique.
Yeah, I've never heard of this.
Well, I'll tell you the difference between Denmark and the United States. This would be, you could make a lot of money doing this here. Like, you would be rich within like a month. Jill was sharing about a person who would sell the name rights to cockroaches that like their bearded dragon would eat, and then they feed them. Like, so if you had an ex, you would name that cockroach, and then you feed it, right, Jill, to the
Yeah,
lizard, and it was therapeutic. Like this,
yeah,
so maybe Switzerland's a bit more American than Danish.
yeah. I don't know. We have. I think our humor is kind of similar. We prank each other. We are not not in an evil way, but like that's we have a dark sense of humor, and I think that's because it's I don't know. We need a morbid sense of humor to get through that long dark winter, and um, so it becomes like kind of like a morbid yeah like an ingrown morbidity in the Danish people. But I have never heard of anybody hiring a clown.
Do you think they would though? Do you
No,
Okay,
think
so
that's
I
there's
would
that's
this.
be in
that's
business
fine.
doing
It's
that?
a
Do you think I would do well in Denmark, or do you think I would crap out?
Like sorry, I you
Oh, sorry,
the
my internet
connection
connection.
was
I was
bad.
gonna
What did you
say,
say?
I said, so if I like opened that business in Denmark, would it do well or would it tank?
Ah, I don't know. I'm maybe maybe with young people I think, but generally I think we're stingy. GoFundMe is not really taking off in Denmark. We're sitting tightly on our money. So it had to be cheap, I think, if for anybody to do that. But like if you could, I don't know, feed them a lot of cockroaches, maybe. I don't know. Ah,
Not just one, but like 5 or 10.
I think it would take more than that. I think it would take more than a single bearded dragon could eat to make money like that. But like financially, it's as soon as you're uh, as soon as you have your visum in Denmark and taking the Danish citizenship test, you're eligible for unemployment So it's not like if you go to Denmark, you're just screwed financially. You don't have to have a job right
Like
away.
have like a crazy idea and like that's a safe place that's just gonna try it, right? That's awesome.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, it's
We have
been
some
so
houses for
fun.
sale in our village. Come and live here.
I would love to travel. I would. So I may take you up on that. Maybe old when I can
Yeah.
finally afford it because we don't have free stuff here. And fortunately, the government doesn't subsidize my earnings or anything. But I definitely would love to visit your country. It's amazing the way that you approach things. I think America could learn a lot from your system and how
think
well it's
America could learn a lot. Yeah, I would like to no longer have just get rid of all the guns. That's my big thing. Just get rid of them. That I would love. I would love that. That just sounds so nice, honestly. I could sit here and daydream
be
about it.
visiting Denmark in your future. I can see it. Like that's going to be your new dream. Jill's going to be like, I need to go to Denmark. Well, this was very informative. I so appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you.
It was fun. We'll have to do this again. I think we could probably talk for hours about how our cultures are different and how they're the same. But you know, it's wonderful that we can talk and connect as humans. You know, no matter where we live. I think that is maybe like the best thing about people. Like we may not lean into that originally, you know, with our thinking brain, but when we do, we can do amazing things. Jill, do you have something to say?
Yeah, so I do want to ask this because this is something I see online at least. Do you guys use hello as like a greeting? Could not hello. How's your day? Because in America, you can take you locked down the hall or something, and you go say how's your day, and the other person will say good, and that's your greeting. You don't mess around with hello, hi usually. That in some settings. Is it the same?
We don't talk to strangers. Like seriously, you would never greet people on the street or anything like that. If you have business with a person, you would just say hi and go along with the business. That's it. You don't have these formalities. Like and that when we traveled the US, it took some getting used to this because you don't really expect an answer to the question, right? You say,
For the
"How's your
correct
day?"
answer, it's good. The answer is good. Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You would think it was kind of odd if a stranger say, "Well, really, my dog died the other day, and my mom is sick," and you would like, "Well, that wasn't what I was expecting for an answer."
I've done that.
And
They have looked at me horrified. It was awesome.
exactly. So no, we don't even greet like a cashier at the supermarket. They would
Really?
no, and we don't have eye contact either.
So
Which is
okay,
great
that
when
must
you're
be
autistic.
nice. That must be nice. No, I know that the cashier around the corner takes, and I know his dog's names. I know what breed they are. I've seen pictures. They're really freaking cute. He's got two huskies and like a pit bull.
Yeah, that would be odd. I know, like when I was younger and going clubbing, and I sometimes met people and we talked and picture and friends on Facebook and things like that. But you would
So like
never.
clubbing's drinking, right? I don't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt
yeah.
you, but okay.
No, yeah. We have no lower legal drinking age in Denmark. So
You mean I could go and get a drink in
yeah.
Denmark?
No, you could go to the supermarket and buy a drink. You couldn't go to like a club or a bar because
I wouldn't want to go
you
to a
have
club or a bar anyways, but I would not. By the way, I'm turning 18 in like less than 6 months. I'm pretty sure. I'm getting pretty close up there now that we're getting through winter. It's July 11th. Like I won't be able to drink for not even when I'm an adult. I gotta wait 3 more years because 21.
Yeah,
That's
and
true.
that's really weird to us because our the legal drinking age for going to a club or going to a bar, that's 18. The basically we have 18. That's the then you're adult. You can go to war and you can go get your driver's license. That's 18 as well in Denmark. But you can go drinking from as soon
So
as your parents allow it.
so here the permit is like 16. I don't remember exactly when you can get a license. It's after a certain amount of time. I'm pretty sure you can get it before you're 18, so you can drive a car uh
Well,
before you're able to drink. You can buy guns before you can drink.
Yeah,
Let me take it say that. You can get, I'm pretty sure it's 18, right? Yeah, you can get guns at 18, but you can't buy a beer.
yeah,
see,
that's
that's the
very
other way
different.
around, right?
Yeah,
You're
Oh, you can
responsible
also go
enough
off
to
to war at
drive.
18 but not drink.
yeah.
That's another
You go
thing.
to
You can go
die
off
for
to
your
war.
country. Mhm. And also, but you cannot rent a campsite until you're 21. Fun fact.
What?
Okay.
That
Yeah.
sucks. Are you serious?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love
we found that
camping.
out. It's a liability thing, apparently. I don't know.
I'll be
You-
dragging my dad. He'll buy the beer in the campsite. I'm not drinking it.
All right. Well,
I
I'm
think
gonna.
our alcohol policy is weird
That's a-
to you because we I just saw this today. Actually, somebody said, "Well, it's super low class if you drink a beer on the street in the U.S."
Yeah.
And you wouldn't bat an eye in Denmark. You shouldn't. You wouldn't go around with a bottle of whiskey, you know. But drinking
I'm
a
pretty sure
beer,
it's illegal here. Day drinking, not day drinking, drinking out in public is illegal here. I'm pretty sure. That's why they have that's why in the shows they have like the paper bags over them, so you can't tell what drink
I've
it
seen
is.
that.
Yeah, that's why it's illegal.
That's so odd to me because well, we start offering our kids just a sip from I don't know as soon as they want to taste it, really. My daughter's 11 and I think she tasted a beer when she was I don't know a couple of years because we as her parents sometimes drink a beer with dinner or something like that or just after a warm summer's day there's nothing better than a cold beer. So she wanted to taste, and that's fine. Nobody bats an eye of that. And when kids when they turn like, I don't know, 13, 14, most parents would start like offering, do you want like a half a glass of beer or a sip of wine or something to, I think it's to learn how to drink responsibly. Do it at
Yeah.
home, get to know your limits before you're thrown into it
I'm pretty
on the town.
I'm
All
pretty
right.
sure.
One second. We will continue this conversation after I stop the record button
Oh,
because we're still
Yeah.
recording and Cori's gone. Thank you so much.
I thought you stopped recording a long time ago.
Oh no. Oh no. But thank you so much for talking to us. We'll continue this conversation. And here's Jen, Jillian, and Cori already left signing off. Thank you so much, Nadja.